Hello, my name is Zachary Sokolov, and I am teaching 8th grade Algebra 1 at Stevenson Middle School in Boyle Heights, Los Angeles. The lesson I will be talking about today is Order of Operations, 7th grade Number Sense Standards 1.2 and 2.5. I also referenced the California Common Core Standards to plan this lesson. These guidelines are evidence-based and ensure that my lessons are aligned to college and work expectations. In our math methods class with Kathy Klemmer, she advised against teaching review independent of new content. Unfortunately, I'd begun planning for this objective before Ms. Klemmer gave us this advice, and going forward, I will heed her recommendations. However, the Common Core Standards understands that not all 8th graders are equipped with the prerequisite number sense skills necessary for mastery of algebra, and have therefore drafted two different curricula based on those classroom realities. After covering order of operations, a skill that I believe is integral to the material we will study in the future, I will dive into the content for which my students are responsible on the May CST. One reason I began with a review of this material was in the spirit of crafting a compelling math narrative. Throughout the ages, stories have been used to teach children important cultural lessons. Similarly, teaching math in a manner that captivates my students, that unveils material in a way that builds on previously learned skills, increases retention, and leads to deeper conceptual understanding. This method of teaching is supported by Reddish's work, and I constantly ask myself how each objective I teach fits into the larger math story I'm trying to tell. The underlying theme of our class this year is my students' evolution as problem solvers. While my main priority is teaching my students the 8th grade algebra content standards, it is equally important that they see the connection between skills used in algebra and problem-solving skills used in challenging life situations. This idea of a transfer of learning experiences is discussed at length in Bransford's book, How People Learn. On page 51, Bransford mentions a theorist named Burns who defines this as the ability to extend what has been learned in one context into new context. Storytelling can aid in this process because it makes the connections in algebra more apparent. Most of my lessons begin with note-taking. This is another skill I'm emphasizing because I think it is central to long-term success in school. It is my goal that 100% of my students understand the benefits to taking good notes and begin to use this resource as a study tool before quizzes and tests. Stevenson is undergoing a school-wide endeavor to fully integrating Cornell Notes into all classes. Students write out problems on the right-hand side of their page and connect the specific examples I give to our year-long narrative by pairing them with probing questions on the left-hand side. At the end of a lesson, I give my students time to write their summaries and then conduct a JTPS to solidify all new information. I require that my students use a deductive note-taking format, beginning with the overarching theme and breaking it down into component parts. This is helpful because it presents a clear, full picture of the material and facilitates discovery-based learning. Students take more ownership of the new information when it is internalized through a process of examination. Marzano promotes the use of visual methods of conveying information, and this is something that I hope to integrate more into my note-taking procedures. This helps all students learn the material, as proven by Marzano's work, but will be especially useful for my English language learners, of which I have many. After note-taking, I move into the I do, we do, you do portion of my lesson. I enjoy whiteboard practice at this time because it allows 100% of students to be involved, and I can see exactly who understands the material and who needed individualized attention during active practice. Further, students do not process all information during strict note-taking, so doing problems helps reinforce the new material that was just discussed. During my lesson on order of operations, roughly 60% of my students matched me during the first example of we do, so I presented one more to the class. In our math methods class, we discovered that a 70% threshold was probably sufficient to move on. And after this first example, almost 90% of my students arrived at the correct answer, so I knew it was acceptable to continue. However, before my active practice, I gave one final challenge problem to see if my students could handle all operations in one single expression. To my elation, nearly 80% of students came to the correct solution. We then entered the active practice phase of this lesson, and I used pyramid practice to help my students fully understand the importance of order of operations. I gave my students 16 order of operation problems divided into 4 categories of increasing difficulty. Students worked on the 4 problems in each level individually and then conferred with their table partner to justify the answers they got. Bransford also talks about the importance of math talk, and by communicating their thoughts to a partner, my students are forced to demonstrate a deeper understanding of the subject matter. At first, only about 40% of the students were making a concerted effort to talk with their partners. But once the initial awkwardness faded, over 90% of my students were actively participating. After my students finish one level, they move on to the next one where they will find more difficult problems. Using the informal assessments during whiteboard practice, I could focus my attention on the handful of students who still struggle with this topic. I did not offer an exit slip on this day of class because the following day my students were being tested on all of Unit 1. Thank you.